A correct nutritional strategy throughout the beekeeping calendar ensures proper functioning of the immune system and consequently a greater response capacity on the part of the organisms against a health-disrupting agent. For Rodrigo Chavi Gonzalez, director of Beekeeping Without Borders, this general and basic concept is applicable to all living beings. We are generally interested in those of zootechnical interest and in particular bees. During some of his lectures that he gives, Rodrigo Gonzalez comments that a beekeeping nutritional strategy is understood as any process implemented by man aimed at improving, balancing and correcting the natural intake of nutrients collected by bees that for various reasons could be affected in their quantity and/or quality. This includes artificial feeding practices and the transfer of bee colonies to areas with better floral supply. Nutrition is the name given to the processes that allow the incorporation of nutrients at the tissue level. That is, the arrival of elemental substances to the tissues for the correct development of an individual. The methods for supplying honey and pollen substitutes, basic foods of the different breeds of bees, and their formulations have already been widely described on our channel. For this reason, no mention will be made of them in this video. The most relevant foods of bees are energy and protein. Energy is provided by sugar solutions and proteins by pollen. Animal nutrition is always related to productive indices, that is, they eat so much to produce so much. Bees eat what they detect as the most suitable. When there is nothing or it is not very suitable, nutritional stress occurs. If the beekeeper tries to correct this situation by feeding syrups, he solves the problem of lack of carbohydrates and energy. But to have a good queen in production, produce royal jelly in sufficient quantity, feed the offspring correctly, ensure good development of all anatomy and longevity require proteins. Pollen is used within the hive mainly by nurse bees as a protein source, either for the development of their hypopharyngeal glands or to be used with some degree of processing in the preparation of the porridge with which they feed all the larvae. After hatching from the egg, the larva is fed by a secretion from the hypopharyngeal glands. After the third day, mandibular secretion is suspended and until the cell is capped, around the 9th day, it is fed with a secretion from the hypopharyngeal gland plus honey, and some residual pollen from the honey crop. Nurses need to consume protein to be able to develop this food system. Nurses digest, metabolize and incorporate 100% of the pollen. On the other hand, in the foragers this percentage is much lower. By observing the suitably diluted feces of a foraging bee under an optical microscope, undigested pollen grains can be seen. Pollen is also used by young bees to complete their body development, and that of certain glands that allow them to fulfill a series of functions in their activities within the hive. Pollen provides the colony with all the protein necessary for the development of the body and its normal functioning. Bees use the proteins in pollen primarily for the development of muscles, glands and other body tissues. The main defense systems of bees are made up of proteins. The immune system is one that identifies substances and/or elements that are foreign to it within the body, identifies them and tries to inhibit or destroy them. These foreign elements can be a pesticide, a bacteria, a virus. The immune system reacts through cells, cellular immunity, enzymes, cofactors, enzymes, among others. Bees have a chitinous covering, hairs and cleaning behavior. Honey, propolis and glandular secretions of bees are also defense elements. The anatomical and histological structure of living organisms is in itself a complex defense system against injuries from the external environment. The complexity of the nutritional processes and the physiology of the digestive system is in direct relation to the anatomical and physiological complexity of the organism in question. The bee intestine tends to simplify the food ingested to make its absorption simpler, more digestible, that is, to expend less energy in the process of entering the tissues. A bee larva is also an organism adapted to the function of digestion and absorption of nutrients. 80% or more of your body is occupied by a developing digestive system, designed at this stage to receive and incorporate mostly protein food. At this stage, the larva does not produce excreta, which demonstrates its enormous capacity to transform food into nutrients. The pollen is collected and stored, maintaining its natural characteristics with some modifications. Honey is the product of nectar transformation, and royal jelly is a glandular secretion. 3 different foods in composition, origin and destination for which the digestive system of bees has adapted. When these foods are found in appropriate proportions in quantity and quality compared to a colony of bees, it can be said that there is nutritional balance. Otherwise, there is no such balance and from there a process of malnutrition or undernutrition begins. Malnutrition implies an increase in susceptibility to diseases, an increase in the mortality rate from diseases and a decrease in the efficiency of immune defense barriers against different pathogens. Even if the cycle of a given disease begins with poor prevention, contagion or a state of poor nutrition, the immune system will act in a deficient manner against the pathogen. A strong colony can get sick, but its response capacity will be much greater and consequently, it will have a greater chance of recovery. A strong colony will be much more efficient at taking advantage of a strategic treatment or feeding. It can withstand a nutritional deficit for a short period, but if it continues, the bee's immune system will be affected, and the possibility of contagion by any etiological agent will increase. The other existing possibility is that the colony survives this critical period, but its productive capacity is altered. That is to say, an apiary arrives alive at the end of winter but recovers its productive capacity only in the middle or end of summer when nectar and pollen production is decreasing or has already ended. The beekeeper perceives this protein deficiency and identifies it as bee turnover. If the pollen supply is correct, we should not notice a population imbalance between nurses with a consequent abandonment of their offspring. When the new laying stage begins, the cooling of the brood is simply the same thing expressed in another way. Numerous studies have shown that severe or chronic deficiencies of many nutrients reduce the immune response. This is not surprising if one takes into account the high rate of cell division and the large number of enzymatic cofactors that are necessary for the immune response to occur. Fortunately, severe nutrient deficiencies are rare in modern animal production as a consequence of scientific formulation of diets. Currently, nutritional deficiency translates into progressive decrease in the population of a colony, increased susceptibility to diseases, deficiency of the immune system, decrease in production per productive unit, decrease in reproductive parameters, probably alteration in the composition of royal jelly, decreased life expectancy of bees, longevity, less efficiency in tasks that involve physical wear, increase in structural lesions, digestive system. A bee's chances of survival from the moment it leaves its cell range from a few hours to several months depending on the availability of food. Let us then think about the life expectancy of autumn-winter bees that have just been harvested. The supply of nectar and pollen is scarce or non-existent. The population is still very numerous and temperatures are still high. From here to nutritional stress there is one step. Protein intake is essential in the development of the bee from the first larval stage to adult. The development process requires very high protein percentages even in autumn and winter. It is increasingly common to hear from beekeepers that the queen did not stop laying this winter. The winters are increasingly warmer, and the laying area is still present. If there are not sufficient reserves, the nascent bees will be susceptible to alterations in their development, which will later translate into noticeably shorter longevity, or they will be potential sources of infection and transmission of infectious diseases. Regarding the health of the bee colony, Rodrigo Gonzalez expressed himself, under normal conditions the mortality of worker larvae is low, but higher in drones and queens that suffer more from dietary fluctuations. But when there are nutritional problems, the mortality of the larvae increases considerably, and even under conditions of lack of pollen, the cannibalism of the offspring can be an important source of protein to ensure the survival of the adults and consequently of the colony. Bees use pollen proteins to supply muscles and glands, and from some amino acids to synthesize other amino acids. Those amino acids that cannot be synthesized by the body are called essential. It is necessary to collect them, and not all species have them. Physiological processes are carried out with the expenditure of energy from carbohydrates. Haydak in 1935 demonstrated that the weight and nitrogen content of bees at birth is directly related to the entry of pollen into the hive. The rearing of a single bee from the egg hatching period until it is born requires 3.21 milligrams of nitrogen, which means approximately 145 milligrams of pollen per bee.